From the end of 2015 onwards, I started to enjoy a resurgence in enjoying Jane Austen. And even more recently, because I've been watching all these adaptations of her work, the thing that catches my eye the most, besides the acting and the interpretation of her novels, is the fashion. Also, I've been enjoying making my own stuff recently, even if it's just insane costumes that I don't have an occasion to wear them to. Bit by bit, I'm putting together a dress that I saw in a dream that was so beautiful I had to make it. Hopefully you might see it one day. So I always wanted a Regency-style dress, and I saw my chance when I found out that there is a Jane Austen ball in Bath this year. If you're watching this when the video comes out, today is the day of the ball. The twist is you're only allowed in by wearing 18th century or early 19th century costumes. And I made it my mission to make my own gown to wear to it. But then something terrible happened. The tickets for the ball sold out quicker than a Taylor Swift concert. But the plan was to still make a dress. And in the words of John Humphreys, I've started so I'll finish. I completed the dress a while ago at the start of spring because guess what? Regency dresses are very easy to make. Or at least I thought so. Because the dress was too big. So I'll show you how I made it fit. But first a little history, because this is what the whole channel is about. Regency-era Britain describes the last years of King George III's reign, where his physical and mental state was deemed too deteriorated to continue in his duties. So his son, the future George IV, took on his father's mantle without actually being king. He inherited the throne in 1820. As George IV died in 1830, and then we'd have 7 years of William IV, but it wasn't until 1837 when Queen Victoria ascended to the throne that the Regency era was considered ended. Jane Austen lived in the peak of this time, and her novels were written to satirise and criticise the everyday life of Regency England. Her novels were published in the mid to late 1810s, both before and after her death. Hence, the majority of her adaptations are set in this time period. The fashion of the 1810s was in the wake of Romanticism and the Age of Enlightenment. Love of nature and imagination written into poems by the likes of Keats, Byron and Shelley protested the alarming uptake of machinery, factories and dark satanic mills. Women's fashion from the 1790s rejected the wide-hipped, overly decorated gowns which signified everything the French Revolution wished to destroy, and began taking inspiration from ancient Greek and Eastern styles, where skirts were draped simply over a woman's legs, and they would decorate their hair with turbans. The style of dress typically seen in a Jane Austen drama is called the Empire waist, where the waistline comes under the bust with a sash or a ribbon dividing the two. There's also possibly a low neckline pushing the bosom upwards, and ruffles, lots of ruffles. For most of history, especially for women of higher born status, they wouldn't actually wear undergarments, as they had a lot of skirts in the way, and it was difficult enough for them to reach the chamber pot without having to worry about their undies. It's called an empire waist, in reference to the Napoleonic Empire, as this style originated in France, and the British copied the style when Lady Emma Hamilton adopted it. For reference, if it was a galactic empire waist, it would look something like this. Overall, it allowed ladies more freedom as they no longer had to go sideways through doors. It began to decline in popularity at the start of the Victorian era, where the waistline dropped and women were made to cover their skin and confine themselves to corsets, instead of the more comfortable stays. However, fondness for Jane Austen's works and the loose, flowy style overall has repeatedly sparked interest in reviving the style. It saw a brief resurgence in the late Edwardian era, much like what you see Rose wearing in Titanic, as well as in the 1960s. And of course, with the popularity of Bridgerton, interest in Regency dresses has gone viral. Despite loving the costumes in an Austen drama and the Empire style overall, there is a problem which I often find when it comes to high-waisted fashion. And that is, if you haven't noticed at this point, I have big boobs, and I cannot lie. You other brothers can't deny. It is a struggle, and one of the reasons why I've grown fond of the idea of making my own clothes. I don't have the stereotypical female body type either. I have wide shoulders because I went swimming a lot as a child, which is another reason for the big boobs. This means I have to buy the next size up when it comes to jackets and button-ups, and it's probably why I struggled so much with my school uniform shirts, because the rule was at school we had to do our top buttons up, but they were always too tight for me, and so when I did have the top button done up, it felt like I was being strangled. And I don't have that wide a neck, so I would always find the seam line going across my breasts if the waistline was meant to go under them and accentuate them. The whole thing left me feeling grumpy. Earlier this year I actually made a dress with an empire waist, and you would not believe the relief I felt when I realised that the line was meant to go under my breasts the whole time. I followed the pattern created by Transformations with Tracy. I'll link the pattern and the video in the description. And when one is making a dress, I tend to give my measurements a couple of centimetres extra just in case, because it's better to make something that's too big, which you can then take in, rather than something that's too small and you have to get more fabric. For this dress project, the main focus is in the bust, and the problem is there is too much space in the front. I can't heighten it at the shoulder or the waistline will come up, so I have to cinch the fabric with the one thing Jane Austen didn't have: elastic. When you have big boobs, elastic is your best friend. This was meant to be a ball gown, but in its finished state, it more resembles a simple day dress that perhaps one of the Bennet sisters would wear while they sew in the drawing room and wait for news about Netherfield Park. I bought 3 meters of this dark pink cotton fabric. I can't remember the specific colour on the tag, it might have just said pink, but because I'm that picky, I'm just going to call it raspberry. The intention was to have this cotton layer be a base layer and then add a top layer of lace, because I found some white lace curtains in a charity shop and thought they'd be a good top layer. But when I put it together, it didn't come out the way I liked. So I scrapped that idea, and by that time I knew I wasn't going to the ball. I'm going to use the lace for another dress idea I have. I pinned it together on my dummy a while back, but I haven't sewn it together yet. You may see it on my Instagram, if you follow my Instagram. I put a polycotton lining in the bust, using some leftover fabric from my other empire dress. It's always good to do this because it strengthens the bust against the weight of the skirt. I also made this faux petticoat from a bedsheet, so if I ever get to wear this one day, it won't get blown about or stick to my legs. To make the dress pop a little more, I'm going to contrast the raspberry with this salmon-covered shiny cotton, which I managed to get on clearance. Originally there was a zip in the back, but I think I prefer just elasticating the dress, because it's just easier to get in and out of. I've already used elastic on the sleeve cuffs. First off, the pattern I got to make this dress was from a website of free patterns. I'll look up what it was in post. And to be honest, rather than print it, I measured the PDF to fit a piece of A4 and then I traced it off the screen. That's probably why I'm having this problem. Day 1 of making adjustments had me focusing on elasticating the neckline. The first thing to do was sew up the back and then make a seam channel to feed the elastic through. The main aim of these adjustments were to use the resources I had, mostly reaping what I could find from my fabric scraps. The elastic I used for the neckline was from some elastic that I used on a failed attempt at a blouse. In the case of that blouse and the dress that went with it, the pattern misprinted, so it was way smaller than it was meant to be. Anyway, I fed through the elastic, and once I was finished, I sewed both ends together and closed up the gap by hand. Then I hemmed up the bottom of the bodice by hand and tried it on later that night, and it fit better than predicted. I took a picture of how it looked on myself and on the dummy. By the way, I did have to put a bra on my dummy and stuff the bra with fabric scraps just so it accommodated my breast size for reference. The next step was the skirt. Day 2 was putting it together. I'd already sewed the petticoat to the main skirt by hand, and after a lot of ironing, I decided to attach the waistband to the top first. The salmon cotton is a little too flimsy to hold up by itself, but I do have the original sash. I fed it through the new one, making sure the seam of the salmon fabric would be hidden, and sewed it onto the top and bottom, leaving another channel between the seams to feed the elastic through. Then there was the fun job of doing that and making sure the elastic didn't get twisted, which is something that can happen. And then came the job of attaching the top to the bottom. To be honest, it wasn't as hard as I thought. The trick was to make sure that the hand seam stitches lined up so they wouldn't show on the outside. I turned it inside out, and here was the result. I was honestly expecting something disastrous, because that has happened quite a bit in the past. Thankfully it came out as I'd hoped. I tried it on, and here is the almost finished result. There's just one more thing I want to add. And on day 3, I had to wrestle with my choices for finishing touches. Of course, to hide the bit on the back where I fed the elastic through, I made a fake sash fastener, so it looks as if the sash is already done up. But there were some other things I wanted to add. There is this white trim I bought on impulse from a local stationery shop, and also these cream-coloured ribbon roses, which I found with a bunch of other bric-a-brac at a charity shop. You find a lot of strange things in charity shops, but sometimes they're very useful. I've got a lot of these ribbon roses that I've been meaning to put on things. But in the end I thought, this looks okay as it is, we just need the fake bow. If I was making a ball gown, yes, I would have added the ribbon roses. But that gives me an idea for a follow-up, where I could try to make a more accurate and better fitting, albeit Bridgerton-esque style gown. I'm thinking fabric the same colour as the roses, or maybe something to contrast it. And then we have organza over the top of the base layer, so we can then add the roses at our own pleasure. By the way, I haven't actually seen Bridgerton. I might read the books first. But I must say it seemed to have stolen Rain's idea of using instrumentalised versions of pop songs to play in the background. Overall, I got what I wanted, somewhat. The dress is not perfect, or completely historically accurate, but at least the project didn't fail. At least this fabric wasn't wasted. If I suddenly found myself wearing it to a Jane Austen convention, I believe it would pass muster. I would love a chance to make some more historical costumes like these, and of course make videos showing my process. And yes, I would like to do another Regency-style gown that actually fitted under my boobs on the first attempt. And I bet me saying I have interest in making historical clothing has you all wondering, will I make a Tudor gown one day? The answer is maybe. It's not off the table, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. For 3 reasons. 1, I may have to drop everything and relocate in the near future. So I don't want to be in the middle of making a complex classic 1520s court gown only to have to stop suddenly and leave you hanging for weeks. We'll have to wait until long-term planning is more available. 2, it would require a lot of fabric and I'll have to save up for it. There are a lot of parts when it comes to Tudor fashions, no matter which bit of that era you're looking at. Of course, I'm going to want to use the classic Anne Boleyn look. And 3, I'm really struggling to find a pattern online that's not expensive or unavailable due to no international shipping. As I said, it's not completely off the table, just not feasible right now. I'm experiencing a bit of a turning point as far as things are considered. There's a lot to figure out, but I do have another 18th century pattern that I bought on clearance, and I would like to try that one day. We'll see how it goes. Again, we just need like the time and money to acquire the fabric and put it together. This is going to be a super duper quick outro because it is 10 o'clock at night and I just want to go to bed. It's been a very long week, very long day. My only respite is going to a cafe and getting a nice iced mocha and a muffin. So yeah, I don't want to get into too much detail at the moment. There's just been this whole shake-up where I've been offered sort of a job, but it's like not a permanent job, it's a casual thing. They'll call me in when they need me. So I may suddenly disappear for weeks on end. We'll see what happens. But yeah, if you did like that video, I hope this means we can make more costume making videos, and I like throwing different ideas to see what sticks. But anyway, if you did like the video, please make sure that you acknowledge that you liked it by clicking the like button and leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, click the bell, all the good stuff that makes the algorithm like me. And thank you to my patrons who support this channel, because I don't think I would have gotten this far without them. If you sign up to the channel, you will get bonuses such as interacting with me on a Discord, as well as access to the videos before they're released on YouTube, as well as the scripts that I write, and your name in the credits. And the highest level contributors, King and Queen, get a shout out. Thank you Alison Cuff, Anna from Gustine, Annalise Barnett, Jill Nero, Larissa and Leslie Williams. So I'll see you all next month.
As true king my reign began.